the gold, Bitcoin will soar like a hot air balloon. There is no question in my mind that gold will be confiscated by this private cartel of parasites known as the Federal Reserve. They have franchised their parasitic central banks theme in 187 countries now, and they are draining them using their debt instrument of destruction. The Federal Reserve is the private cartel that ordered FDR to call in the gold. Gold was the private property of the people. Government has no right to it. And to allow a private cartel to rob the people of their gold is illegal, immoral, unethical, and unconstitutional. At the time of the theft, they accused the people of hoarding gold, but this is not true. What is true is that the Fed was counterfeiting gold certificates, and a crisis developed when people noticed a whole lot of gold certificates in paper form and not much gold to back it up. So they took the gold instead of the worthless paper. Now we understand what happened. Let me retweet what I said. The Fed printed too many counterfeit gold certificates. People started demanding gold instead of the worthless paper, and a panic ensued. FDR's excuse was that the people were hoarding gold. I want you to note the modus operandi of these thieves, because they will repeat the same process with a twist next time. They are still up to their paper tricks, and today it's promises of gold in the future, but COMEX isn't making good on gold futures. So promises of gold in the future is already in default, isn't it? They don't have any gold yet. They set the price of gold. Does that sound a little shady to you? In 1933, the Fed was counterfeiting gold certificates, and since they are doing it again, a little different this time, anyone can see that gold confiscation is the other shoe you're waiting to drop. This is why I'm sure that the Federal Reserve will call in the people's privately held gold and give them newly printed fiat paper in place of their precious metal, which some consider real money. They traded their worthless fiat for real money, and the Fed will take it from them and hand them fake money, fiat. If they don't swap it immediately for something real, they might lose all they have worked for all their lives. The day is coming when the Fed will call in the people's gold. And what will that do to the value of gold? It depends a lot on what the world does regarding fiat. If they use their gold holdings to back the currency, then it ceases to be fiat at that point. But is that what people want? Is metal money? There was a time when seashells were money. That was a long time ago. Should we go back? Why don't we give up our cars and ride horses instead? Give up jet flight and walk to foreign countries. The truth is, gold is obsolete as money, isn't it? Gold is easily tracked, and so it's easily confiscated, and this kills the value of the metal. I won't call it a precious metal because it doesn't have many uses once money is off the list. And I think it will be as soon as the government steals all the gold from the people. You put your unspent earnings into gold, and the government takes it from you, handing you little pieces of paper instead. And what is the intrinsic value of these pieces of paper? Voltaire said that eventually fiat returns to its intrinsic value of 0. By decree, it has value, and people are forced to accept it as legal tender. But this gives one parasitic group too much power over the others. Eventually, they wind up with all the corporations, all the gold, all the stocks, bonds, and banks, and we get little pieces of paper to mark our debt. No, I have a better idea. We all buy Bitcoin and tell the bankers to bank this. Decentralized currency is the way to go, no? We don't want any central bank charging us interest on money they created on a ledger running up an $18 trillion debt, do we? As the world catches on to the banking scam, they are going to be looking for a place to store their earnings, and gold isn't money. Unless it's secured, and these pricks don't want to make your gold secure. They want to take it from you. And so I see Bitcoin as the new money. And I see cryptography developing in response to government seizure of one's private property. The banking system is dead. It started to die when the banks gave the IRS access to your deposits without any law on the books to prove they had any right to your earnings. When the big banks started screwing around with derivatives and they influenced our so-called representatives to pass the Bankruptcy Reform Act of 2005, that was the final coffin in the nail of the banking system. Paying you 0.3% annually for your deposits isn't going to justify the risk you take when banks seize your assets. Recall that when Campbell, a New York attorney, did not turn over his private property to the Fed, Chase seized his safety deposit box and handed his private property over to the banksters. That must be interpreted as unsafe. Your safety deposit box is anything but safe with the Fed around to take what's yours. We need the Fed like we need the Ebola virus. And I favor yanking their monopoly on the nation's currency just as soon as we possibly can. How do you feel about the Fed? Should they go or no, Joe? Go down to the comments section of this video and do let us know. The more controls they put on us, the more we want to get free of their grip. The more wealth they take from us, the harder we shall look for an invention that frees the slaves. And with the advent of Bitcoin, I'd say someone is thinking and producing a currency that they can't take if all the minds who are working on this problem have their way. We don't like the snooping, and we want our privacy back. And we want to see an end to each false flag, inside job terrorist attack. As the people become aware, they will structure a defense. They will come up with solutions that make total sense. Computer programs will play a role in protecting the people. Bitcoin and the blockchain are just one vehicle. You're going to see a flip in the distribution of wealth. Bitcoin can make poor people rich and improve the nation's health. Early adapters will be the first to benefit from the cryptocurrency. The big banks and the central banks have an incentive to keep the Bitcoin price low, but it will break out of this container with each state of emergency. In Venezuela, their currency lost 60% of its value recently in 1 month alone. The people are restricted on the number of dollars they can own, and this sends people fleeing to Bitcoin, setting the tone in the South American zone. Government is a crook, and this private cartel of thieves is 1,000 times worse. When you follow the yellow brick road, to find out who's really running the show, it's the Federal Reserve. They have far too much power and need to be driven back. The people should have this power because Congress can't be trusted anymore and the representative system isn't working. It's obsolete and should be replaced with a new system whereby people represent themselves locally, not hand over power to someone far away. This only yokes all the little communities into one giant entity to pull their wagon. And I don't like that idea at all. Taxes move up the conveyor belt to the all-seeing eye of the pyramid, and nobody knows where their money went or why it was collected. We have far, far too many taxes. And some people are getting a free ride. The burden of their lavish spending is placed on the backs of the poor, and the poor are getting much poorer, while the rich are getting much, much richer. And where this is going to end is revolution as the people awaken to the slavery system of government with taxes moving up the pyramid to the top. Allowing a private cartel to take the people's gold is wrong. And those with gold haven't done their information campaign, and they are going to lose their precious metals again. You cannot trust government to protect the people from these parasites who manage to steal all the wealth from the citizens one way or another. Gold will once again be taken by this private cartel of thieves and parasites at the Federal Reserve. The name fools you because they aren't actually federal, and the only reserve we had was stored at Fort Knox, and the parasites stole that too. I remember reading about it. The Fed took the gold at Fort Knox for safekeeping. 300 trucks with gold bullion were removed without discussion, without our approval, and Congress just looked on as if the Fed had a right to the nation's gold. Congress assumes too much, I think. The Congress from a long time ago gave the Fed a monopoly over the nation's currency, and it has ruined America. We need to recognize this fact and get back on the constitutional track, Jack. Then our central bank, the Federal Reserve, expanded and infiltrated 187 other countries with the same drain device. Now they have almost all the wealth in the world. What can be done about this? Bitcoin enters the stage, invented by a cryptographer who hates the theft of wealth system. He structures something that decentralizes the currency, and the world snatches it up like racks of rib at a Sunday barbecue picnic, dripping with barbecue sauce and sautéed peppers and onions. Bitcoin caught on, one might say. Bitcoin can return the wealth to the people because big banks aren't buying them. They don't believe in them. They consider Bitcoin their enemy, and it is. The communists in China aren't buying them either. In Russia, Putin thinks that Bitcoin is a CIA plot. Clearly, Putin is against Bitcoin, and Bitcoin is his best friend right now. We'll get into that a bit later. I have a surprise for you on that issue. Bitcoin can flip the table over in a hurry, which I will soon explain in detail if you have the time. The average viewer watches for just 4 minutes, and so I'm not sure how long you will last. Some of you are writing in the comments section, hurry up and make the point and do it fast. They have attention deficit syndrome, and they can't focus on anything for very long. If the viewer can't be patient until I develop my argument, maybe the viewer should go back to reading comic books and listening to songs. The tale of how we got here is not explained in a sentence or two. The powers that be have had us by the short hairs since 1862. To finance the Civil War, the greedy bankers demanded 25% interest from Lincoln, who feared defeat by the powerful and well-armed South. He printed up greenbacks in defiance of the bankers and told them to take a flying leap, and a bullet fired into the back of Lincoln's head exited his mouth. In 1913, a secret meeting was held off the coast of Georgia in which bankers plotted to get the Federal Reserve Act passed. Congress awarded the Federal Reserve the exclusive right to print the nation's currency to avoid taxation in exchange for easy money that Congress wanted fast. Congress sold us out, agreeing to pay interest on money merely created on a ledger that the Fed hadn't earned. The powers handed to this private cartel were enormous, but at the time, where this was going to lead was not discerned. Congress has had over 100 years to consider the mistake. Meanwhile, the octopus has its tentacles wrapped around everything of value, and yet nothing is being done to rid our country of this parasitic infestation, and some think the battle for freedom can't be won without a gun. Congress isn't doing their job. Congress has the only constitutional right to print the nation's currency, and it's supposed to be backed by silver. There isn't anything in the U.S. Constitution that says Congress shall have the right to hand off this exclusive right to any private cartel of bankers who will create money on a ledger and then charge us interest on that money, thereby creating a debt monster, draining us of everything we ever will have, passing on enormous debt to kids that won't be born for 200 years. If Congress represented the people, they'd reverse this very bad 1913 decision because it's wrong. None of us today had any say in the decisions that allowed this back in 1913, and the system is tired out and worn. We, the people of today, should not be bound by any law that was passed before we were born. We need to return to constitutional law with one exception. We don't need representatives any longer, and we can do without the corruption and the deception. We are in terrible shape in the USA as a result of representative government, and it's time to bring this chapter to an end. We don't have any representatives in Washington, and if you want to tweet it, that's the message to send. We have co-conspirators, that's all. Whenever needed, they help the thieves steal what's left of America. Your pensions will be taken. Your bank deposits will be taken. And if you don't believe me, just look up the Bankruptcy Reform Act of 2005 and see what they have set up for themselves. A lawyer in Los Angeles knows more than anyone about this so-called Reform Act, and her name is Ellen Brown. She is very down to earth, explains things very well, and is waging a battle for the people. I admire that woman, and also Karen Hudes, a World Bank attorney and whistleblower. These two girls have more guts than 10 of you military guys and 20 of you street cops. How do you cops like your new military equipment? Are you anxious to use them against we the people? In the comments section of one of my videos, one can get a barometer reading on the public at home and overseas. One viewer was talking violence, which I don't like, and so I was trying to persuade him to use the non-violent approach. He told me that there are 300 million guns in America, and he felt that the government could not control that many soldiers looking for a cop to kill or a government official to slay. I would say that bankers are not going to fare very well in any kind of revolution. The people are angry. I'm handling 2,000 comments each month, and the people want to see heads on the end of their sticks. They are going after those they deem guilty, and who might that be? Bankers, because they have been sucking blood like parasites for over 100 years. Cops, because they have been brutal, violent, deadly, and have no regard for the U.S. Constitution. Sheriffs are not included in this group. The National Sheriff's Association has come out with a clear message. They vowed not to enforce any law which is unconstitutional. Please remember this and try to inform others about the position the sheriffs have taken to side with the people, okay? I'm begging you, don't kill sheriffs. Don't kill anyone, because a mistake like that is not reversible, and the sheriffs are on our side. As for the city cops, if they don't come out on the side of the people publicly real soon, I don't give a rat's ass what happens to them. This is a time for declaring which side you will be fighting on. If you cops think that a totalitarian dictatorship is what your kids and family need, just go on grabbing all those free military gifts. And let's see who puts a bullet in your back by the end of the revolution. The people have you far outnumbered, and they are itching to kill someone who is helping the dictators ruin our country, spoil our future. I wish I could calm those who want to get violent, because I think we the people are outgunned by those who control the armies, and I want to turn over power and control in a civilized fashion. Violence does not bring peace, but peace brings peace. Why don't we try peace? Give peace a chance. A peaceful rollover of power is better. Those bankers are losing the battle anyway, and by the end of this video, you will see that a chain reaction is inevitable, and the wealth that has been concentrated into the hands of a few will be distributed naturally to the people. And I will give you a full explanation. Bitcoin plays a key role in this. So if you hate Bitcoin, think it's the work of Satan, go away and don't ever come back. You are of no use here. You don't have the right ideas, and you will never fit in. This channel was established for reasonable people who do their own thinking. And if you hate Bitcoin, can't see its intrinsic value, you belong with the Alan Greenspans and the Jamie Dimons. When the tables flip, these pricks will be on the bottom, stripped of power, stripped of assets, and the people will have dominion over them. That day is coming thanks to Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not compatible with central banks, big banks, the IRS mafia, parasites, and the Federal Reserve. Bitcoin is a game changer, as you will see. Meanwhile, we have some decisions to make, don't we? The cops who think they can take cash from motorists, or that they can accept gifts of military equipment to murder innocent Americans, will find that few support the dictatorship, and the trend is already underway to reduce those numbers drastically. I feel the military is crumbling on support of the dictatorship, and they will turn on their bosses who order them to kill we the people. If the cops use military weapons on us, their uniform might be targeted by angry citizens, and all cops could die, even the good ones. So let's not be hasty or irresponsible. Let's be calm and thoughtful. Let's invoke John Lennon and give peace a chance. Not all cops are guilty. Many of them respect the U.S. Constitution and side with the citizens of this country. Cops who have a history of violating civil rights will get their asses killed when the people take to the streets and overwhelm the cops, and that police uniform will look like a bullseye to these violent Americans. I can't calm these people by writing to them in the comments section of my videos. Their hostility is overflowing, and they are mad with the insanity of the government and the constitutional violations, the thefts, the lies, the false flags, control of the media, and the propaganda. We are on the cusp of a revolution in America, and I urge all public officials to come out on one side or the other. Silence at a time like this is suicide. The violent Americans will target those who are not outspoken and publicly on the side of the people. I'm doing videos about a peaceful turnover of power, and these people want to kill cops and draw blood now. I will continue my peaceful protest of what I see going on. in my once great country. But you cops better get a grasp on what is going on in America. Apparently, someone who wants a totalitarian regime here is arming you pigs so that you can do their dirty work for them, as the military has been used to take over the lucrative heroin and cocaine business. And if you fall for their game, I think some Americans will turn very violent toward you. This is a warning, and it's coming to you in love to warn you of the disaster for you and your community. It is my opinion, based on dialogues I've had with them, that they wouldn't hesitate to put a bullet in your back, with your uniform on or not. My warning is to save your life. Get on the people's side now. Obey the U.S. Constitution and be public about it, or you are going to die in violence. We are at the flashpoint, and government knows it. They killed the economy in order to control the people. The people are on food stamps, and they are very, very angry. The U.S. dollar has been watered down by the counterfeiting, and we the people see dozens of trillions of dollars going to big banks and large corporations through stock market investment by the big banks, and the people want to start killing you all to be rid of you. The dictatorship has prepared by arming police with military weapons and setting up an American Gestapo, the Department of Homeland Security, and the TSA. Both of these governmental agencies are a great offense to we the people, who have up until now lived in a free country run by representatives of the people, but all that is gone now, and violence awaits. The dictatorship has 3 legs: the cops, the military, and the people. And those legs are crumbling. Support for the dictatorship is dying. People in military have already caught on to the plans of the tyrants, and they're not going for it. The sheriffs have come out on the side of the people, and street cops will eventually catch on, but it might take some time because cops are slow. Cops who don't catch on will be targeted, and those who do catch on might be killed anyway because they didn't speak out loud enough or publicly enough. I can't save the good cops. I can only warn them of what I see and hear from the angry Americans who are expressing their ire on my YouTube channel. I would like to see you cops tell the banker pricks to fuck off, and that there isn't going to be any firing on the people here in these United States. But the season on bankers just might open soon, and all bankers might have to lie about their profession for their own safety and in order to go anywhere. When the people take over the checkpoints, look out. They will have control over all that juicy information that the banker pricks put into place to control we the people, and it all might backfire on them when the people take over these checkpoints and drag bankers out of vehicles and beat the shit out of them. If your national ID card says KMA, kiss my ass, they might drag your ass out and put 4 or 5 bullets into your head before they ask any fucking questions. That's how angry I perceive them to be. They know you rigged elections. They know you manipulated gold and silver prices and fixed LIBOR rates, and they're angry as hell about your insider trading. They know the bankers at the Fed, the big banks, the large corporations, and the IRS mafia have run rackets for decades, and these angry Americans are fed up with your bullshit. And they want to start killing bankers, heads of large corporations, anyone who works for the IRS or helps the IRS mafia fleece Americans out of their hard-earned pay, like tax attorneys and CPAs. And if you think that martial law is going to save your asses, think again. A swarm of angry Americans will not be easy to turn away, especially if some of them are cops, sheriffs, and military people. It seems that everyone is figuring out that we are all slaves. And nobody wants to help the dictators lock down America after we fought many wars to keep America and the world free. Not on our watch, banker boy. In World War II, you bankers cornered Japan and forced them to attack Pearl Harbor so you can make a killing from America's involvement. Today, you're doing the same thing with Russia. You have the very unpopular sanctions and then the attack on the Russian currency. I heard that there was an auction recently, like May 30th, 2015, in which Russia tried to auction off 700 billion Russian rubles, and there were no takers. Not one offer, and the auction had to be ended. The Forex exchange even removed the ruble from the list of currencies being traded. Okay, you think you have isolated Russia, and they will come to their knees. Russia has a card that they can play. I see it, and I don't think Putin does. His comments seem to indicate that he is blind. If he ever does get a clue, he will know exactly what to do, and it has to do with Bitcoin. Maybe you thought of it too. I see Bitcoin as a very powerful tool. It's like a nuclear weapon, only it is much more precise. Instead of killing innocent people, Bitcoin can target those who are imposing the sanctions on Russia, isolating this country and forcing them to retaliate to get World War III started. But we the people don't want or need a nuclear war. I have no fondness for Putin. I don't like communist governments, but Putin knows how to kick ass in this quasi-world chess game, and he makes Obama look like a novice with a propensity toward nuclear war. I have also read on the Zeta report of last Sunday, July 5th, 2015, that the aliens won't allow any nuclear wars on this planet, and they have poured liquids into the nuclear material, and there is no more radioactivity. So Putin has no nuclear bombs, and that sort of ties his hands, but his opponents have had the same liquid poured into their nuclear material, and their bombs don't work either. So you bankers, decided you're going to do the sanctions thing and drag Europe into the conflict, but they don't like cutting off their own noses to please you pricks. Europe wants the sanctions against Russia to end. Now let me propose something that Putin hasn't thought of apparently, because if he did, he'd be on this like a fly on dog shit. It will take a while for Putin to even think of this idea because he thinks that Bitcoin is a CIA plot. That tells me two things about this asshole Putin. One, Putin doesn't know Bitcoin, and he has no idea how much Nick Szabo hated the world fiat regime and the centralized control. Using debt and their 187 central banks, Nick Szabo built into Bitcoin the decentralized aspect to kill the banker monopoly. The reason that Bitcoin caught on like a brush fire is that all of us hate the slavery system of debt and the Fed's monopoly on our nation's currency. Bitcoin is a currency. It's also a payment system, and it's a worldwide movement to depose those who pose as our leaders. They are anything but leaders. Interbreeders, maybe. Bottom feeders for sure. Useless parasitic eaters, indeed. Misleaders, deceivers, and cheaters. Damned right. It's time for the whole lot of them to go. Bitcoin was created for that purpose. Putin needs to lay off the vodka and sober up to the truth about Bitcoin. He seems to be clueless. Number one was he doesn't know Bitcoin. Number two, if Putin thinks that Bitcoin is a CIA plot, Putin doesn't know the CIA. The CIA could never come up with anything as clever as Bitcoin. This moronic CIA is good at killing people. They do false flags, but they are clearly not clever at it, using the same modus operandi for every false flag terrorist act they do. There isn't anything clever about the CIA, and Putin doesn't know it. That surprised me. When the CIA is involved in any false flag, there is always a drill on the day of the event. People are inducted into the drill thinking it's just a drill. They are paid participants, and then there is a false flag. Surprise! Those in the drill, like Mohammed Atta, are killed, so they can never speak of the betrayal by the CIA. That's the modus operandi of the CIA, and Putin should know this by now. The CIA isn't clever enough to come up with anything original. They just repeat the same old routines, thinking that we, the people, will never figure it out. How did Putin get to be the head of Russia? His skills seem to be that he knows how to handle the media, remain popular, even though he's a communist, and he has people murdered that spoil his plans. Putin sits on top of a huge oil reserve, and a brilliant Putin would say, "We will accept bitcoins for oil," and that would kick the central banks in the cashews and collapse everything they hold that is valuable. Here's why. How many bitcoins are there at this moment in circulation? The last time I checked, the number was 14,320,500, and it's higher by now. The Federal Reserve did a study of the Bitcoin addresses to see how long people hold them, and 70% of those who have Bitcoins have held them for 2 years or more. That's about 10 million Bitcoins, as I recall. There are then about 4.296 million Bitcoins being traded, and if anyone wants to buy all of them at, say, $270, it would only cost about $1.16 billion. I worked in the oil business, and this $1.16 billion is a tiny oil deal. Some buyers buy 1 million barrels per day for 5 years. I worked on oil deals that were $5 billion, but never closed one. With so much oil and a desire to strike back at the central bankers' attack on the ruble, Russia could easily buy up all the bitcoins, sending the price through the roof and castrating those parasitic bankers who seem to be in control of everything on the planet. Here's how Russia could strike a blow equivalent to a nuclear attack, but targeted at those who own all the best real estate, all the central banks, and all the governments where central banks have their tentacles in deep. If you have $1 billion and you want to buy bitcoins, you can only get a few thousand at today's price of $270. After that, all the cheap bitcoins are gone. If you want another 1,000, you will have to pay $280 or $290 or $300 because those who would sell did sell, and they're out enjoying the profit they made. And if you want to buy more, you have to convince somebody to sell their bitcoins or you get diddly squat. Demand for Bitcoin is rising every day. If any big player enters the Bitcoin market, there aren't any Bitcoins for them. The price will soar like a hot air balloon. Demand sends the Bitcoin balloon up as if demand was helium or hot air. Yeah, that's it. Demand is nothing but hot air. Russia gets Bitcoins and the bankers of the West get a fucking ass whooping that they won't forget. Why? Because Bitcoin will be a better place to put money than in their banks, paying 0.3% annually. That's what I was offered recently by a bank, and I told the bank to fuck off, take a hike. I'm not going to make a bank deposit and lend a fucking bank money without a loan application because their exposure to derivatives is way too fucking high for me. A bank deposit today is a donation to an insolvent bank. It's not a bailment. They think they have us all fooled, but I'm no fool. I listened to Ellen Brown, and now I know what's going on. When will the banks start taking pension funds? What will all money do that is in banks? It will flee like pigs from a gun. What will the banks do when everyone wants to make a huge withdrawal? The banks will say, no more withdrawals. And what will everyone do? Nothing, because the banks hold your funds. And you don't write any checks to pay bills. You starve. Anyone who can will get their money out of the bank just as fast as they can. Smart money already knows what is planned, and they pulled out a long time ago. Some went into gold, but gold and silver will be confiscated. They've done it twice already, under Lincoln and under FDR in 1933. They will seize the gold. I will bet you a peanut butter and jelly sandwich on that. When 1% of the money in banks moves into Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin goes to $750,000 per Bitcoin. That's exactly why the big banks and the central banks have agreed to try their best to keep the Bitcoin price low and prevent Bitcoin from becoming the world's greatest investment ever. If Russia wants to fuck the Western bankers who are isolating Russia, all Putin has to do is say, we will accept Bitcoin for oil, and the bankers go down the elevator shaft without the benefit of an elevator car. Bankers will lose it all, and who gives a shit about parasitic bankers? The stock market is for investments, and when those investments pay shit compared to Bitcoin, what will happen? Will money stay in the stock market, or will smart money go where the returns are higher than 9.5% annually? Bitcoin could show 1% per day increase in price. In just 10 days, an investor gets more return on his investment than he or she gets in a year with stocks. What would you do? You'd earn a year's worth of return on investment every 10 days, wouldn't you? Hedge funds are not run by stupid people. And if Russia doesn't act to corner the available bitcoins, some other country or hedge fund will do it. A pension fund might be the one to buy up all bitcoins as soon as they see their entire fund raided by the thieves who have stolen everything of value on the planet. I assure you this, there is an opportunity here, and if I see it, others see it. I have learned over my lifetime that there are many, many people far, far smarter than me. Some people are so smart that I can't even understand what they are saying, and they are speaking English. They are bound to recognize that the limited supply of Bitcoin is one of the greatest investment opportunities the world has ever seen. And someone is going to act on this. I'll bet my peanut butter and jelly sandwich. This is what I see using simple reasoning. And if you see it too, then we agree that Bitcoin is a black hole for money and will suck money out of everything. The stock market will collapse as people sell off stocks and get their money out and into Bitcoin, where there is no such thing as a stock market crash in times of peril. You might think that real estate is a good investment, but is it? You're lucky to earn 10% annually, and if Bitcoin rises 1% per day, real estate will be sold off like rotting oranges on a flatbed wagon, and nobody will put up with the bullshit of real estate ownership like clogged up toilets and bounced checks. If they can sell off the real estate, put the money into Bitcoin, and enjoy 1% daily growth instead of the turtle's pace of 10% annually. So money flees the stock market, banks, and real estate. These are all holdings of the big pricks who control us with debt and banking bullshit. With just one statement, Putin fucks the West and causes a gigantic collapse of the banks, the stock market, and the real estate prices. None of them are worth a shit as an investment. Once Putin makes the dreaded announcement, Bitcoin for oil, then there's gold. When the big banks collapse, the Fed is going to call in the people's gold and silver, and it won't be worth a shit if the Fed is printing worthless fiat paper to take the people's gold. Then the revolution comes because the rich have the gold, and they will set some volatile citizens into motion to get rid of the totalitarian regime. Then all bankers are dead meat. If anyone works at a bank, he or she won't be coming to work. It'll be too dangerous. Cops traditionally protect banks and bankers, but I am convinced that the people will kill all the cops who try to protect bankers. That's how I see this crisis coming to a head. How do you see it? Because Bitcoin has a limited supply, the fiats around the world are dead. Bitcoin is already the most valuable currency in the world, worth more than 10 times all world currencies combined. If you take one of each, convert it to US dollars, and add them up. I did this and I got $24.51, and I had to get up off the floor. I went down like a ton of $100 bills with RFID chips in them. I couldn't believe it. All the fiat currencies in the world total just $24.51. Are you shitting me? There must be some mistake. The price of Bitcoin today was $271 when I checked. No fiat can compete with a currency that has a limited supply. We are going to see crisis after crisis, and each time money is going to flow into Bitcoin, where purchasing power is preserved and the pricks can't take your Bitcoins. If you take precautions, and there are many that you have to take. Don't plunge into Bitcoins without proper knowledge and preparation. Countries can afford to hire the best to be safe. But I don't know about individuals. Bitcoin might not be safe for common people yet. Russia can figuratively kill the central bankers of Federal Reserve fame by accepting Bitcoin in exchange for oil. As the fiats die, country by country will move into Bitcoin. That is going to put so much pressure on Bitcoin that holders who have been hoarding will demand $10,000 for one Bitcoin and get it, and when they do, the next guy will hold out for $20,000 and get it. They will get what they ask because there isn't any central bank printing Bitcoins in a counterfeit QE bullshit stimulus way. Limited supply, remember that. That's what makes Bitcoin different than the fiat. And that difference is going to prove plenty powerful to Putin in fucking over the pricks who own and control everything. If 70% are hoarding Bitcoins now, just wait. It will be 90%. And the 10% who do sell their Bitcoins to take a profit, thinking that Bitcoin is just like a stock and the price will fall again soon, won't be able to get back in at a price anywhere near what it was when they sold. Sellers will be screwed as Bitcoin rises like a hot air balloon, and the sellers aren't on board. They see the Bitcoin balloon rise and shrink to a dot on the horizon, never again coming back to where they got off. Bitcoin isn't for dealing and taking profits. Bitcoin is for hoarding. Can 70% of Bitcoin holders and hoarders be wrong? Bitcoin is not a stock, and those who think it is have misunderstood the nature of limited supply currency. It's not a credit card either, and those who buy some Bitcoins put them on their phone and go shopping are Looney Tunes. Bitcoin is not a credit card to spend. It's a cryptocurrency with a limited supply, and you hoard them. Some people think that Bitcoin is like gold, and you buy them at a time of crises and unload them in good times. No, this is also wrong. They just can't understand the concept of a currency with a limited supply. I remember when Bitcoin was $50, and at that time the world was just becoming aware of this decentralized cryptocurrency, and it was too risky to buy back then. I wish the price of Bitcoin would return to $50, but this is like hoping that Jesus will return. I don't think Jesus is coming back, and I don't think a price of $50 is ever coming back for Bitcoin either. If you missed that boat, the only boat you can catch today is $271. If Putin gets a clue, he might see the benefits of accepting Bitcoins for oil, and he might really give the central banks and the banksters of the West a fucking they won't ever forget. This could trigger a revolution in America because when people lose their pensions, their gold, their 401ks, they aren't going to like it. And they will let go with everything they have. The government hasn't taken the guns yet, but those who are at the checkpoints might not wish to oppose the people with 300 million guns in the country and 3D printers able to make guns by the tens of thousands every day. We have reached a point where they can't control us anymore, and martial law isn't going to work because those who man the checkpoints have to decide if they want to side with their families against the tyrants who have enslaved us all, or go with the war criminals, terrorists, banker thieves, and parasites. I'm betting that those who man the checkpoints will turn on their employers. They will be swept away with the wave of people determined to kill someone associated with the banking cartel. The central banks are at the end of the line. They are kaput. It's time for them to go into hiding, and I don't know if they can avoid capture and wholesale slaughter by the citizens of this country and other countries which have been raped by central bankers. The central bankers don't have anyone who likes them. Nobody wants to save them. It's the end of the road for these pricks. Be sure to cry. I'm sorry to see them go, actually. We could have become such great friends, you know. I wish they could stay on just a little longer. Yeah, right. This is a very dangerous time to be a banker anywhere in the world. The world hates their fucking guts. Frankly, I'm surprised that Ben Bernanke and Alan Greenspan are still alive. I'm expecting to pick up the paper. Wait a minute, I don't read the fucking newspaper. I haven't read that rag since the internet came along. I'm expecting to turn on my computer and read about the assassination of both Ben Bernanke and Alan Greenspan for their roles in helping the real government rule over us and keep us at slave status, while they set up their central banks and raped the world. They thought they had it made. 7.3 billion slaves. And then Russia announces, Bitcoins are fine. We have the oil. Come and get it. We'll swap your Bitcoins for our oil. The West falls like building number 7 at the World Trade Center. Do I have any advice? No, I don't have any advice for anyone. I see something coming, but unfortunately, it won't come too fast because Putin isn't very smart about money. He's a communist dictator, and he doesn't understand capital. He will never understand capital because he was raised in a system where there was no training in economic things. If Bitcoin is a CIA plot, then Obama tells the truth and his husband is a woman, okay? Blow Putin a kiss and let me get out of here already. Bitcoin has nothing whatsoever to do with the CIA because Bitcoin is clever and the CIA just isn't, okay? The CIA is good at killing people, not coming up with a cryptographic way to shove it up the asses of the bankers. Give me a break. How could Putin say something so asinine? If he said that the CIA came up with the invasion of Afghanistan in order to capture the lucrative heroin business, maybe, but not Bitcoin. The blockchain is brilliant. It solves the double spend problem that plagued cryptographers for a long time. Bitcoin is the work of a genius who did what nobody before could do. Have you ever heard anyone say that about the CIA? Like, oh, that was brilliant how you guys killed that democratically elected representative of the people of that country. I admire you pricks. The CIA works for the money mafia, and that means the Federal Reserve, the big banks, Goldman Sachs, large corporations, and the IRS mafia. The CIA does what it is told, and as long as it's just killing someone, the CIA can handle it. Ask them to invent something which takes brains, and the CIA falls face down right onto the pavement. The CIA couldn't invent a way to wipe their ass if they ran out of toilet paper. They're not clever enough to figure out how to wipe their ass any other way. They couldn't even watch a dog dragging his ass in the grass and imitate the motherfucker. They're not clever enough to observe and just copy a fucking mutt. Dogs are born with an idea, anyway, on how to wipe their ass after taking a shit on your lawn. They're going to drag their ass across your lawn, so you pick up the shit on your shoes and then walk into the house, and your wife is like, "What's that smell? Did you step in dog shit or something?" And you're like, "No, I saw the pile of dog shit and I avoided stepping into it." Your wife will grab one of your shoes and smell it, and she will know that you stepped where the dog dragged his ass. She'll start bitching at you, and you'll run out of the house with shoes in hand, and out of nervousness step right into the pile of dog shit and squish it between your toes. You'll be tracking it all over the yard, and then try to wash it off with the garden hose. The dog is too clever to ever step on his own pile of shit. One dog knows by smell where the other dog dragged his ass, and he won't step into it. The CIA walks around like they need a pair of fucking reading glasses. They couldn't watch dogs dragging their asses, or even come close to inventing a way to get the shit off their asses. The CIA couldn't fucking watch a dog dragging his ass and gather some clues of how to wipe their ass when the toilet paper is gone, and so they have shit all over their shoes. If the head of the Russian people has up until now been your mentor, you need a new one, because Putin thinks the CIA is the Bitcoin inventor. Quick, somebody, get on the phone with investment advisor Max Kaiser. Tell him to pass on my Bitcoin for oil idea to Putin and make that commie wiser. Bitcoin demand has the potential to turn the world upside down, rendering everything held and controlled by the banking cartel worthless overnight, without nuclear bombs, nor death, nor destruction, and without making a sound. I'm looking forward to the day when the people have their way and the wealth has been transferred back. Putin knows how to play the chess game, and so he should realize soon that Bitcoin is capable of doing just that. When the announcement comes, those with Bitcoins in their wallets will be poised for the rise in price. Oil can make the price of Bitcoin rise, but the seizure of gold could make it rise twice. The way I see it, poor people who are holding Bitcoin could become very rich soon, with each world crisis causing capital to flee to Bitcoin, and the price will rise like a hot air balloon. Bitcoin investment requires intensive study, and if you're not willing to put in the time to properly set up things so that your stash is offline, take my advice, learn before you invest, and learn how to protect your stash. Or you will lose your money to a hacker who uses a Trojan horse to get your password and take your hard-earned cash. Thanks for watching. This has been fun. See you next time, okay? When they confiscate the gold, Bitcoin will soar like a hot air balloon. There is no question in my mind that gold will be confiscated by this private cartel of parasites known as the Federal Reserve. They have franchised their parasitic central banks theme in 187 countries now, and they are draining them using their debt instrument of destruction. The Federal Reserve is the private cartel that ordered FDR to call in the gold. Gold was the private property of the people. Government has no right to it. And to allow a private cartel to rob the people of their gold is illegal, immoral, unethical, and unconstitutional. At the time of the theft, they accused the people of hoarding gold, but this is not true. What is true is that the Fed was counterfeiting gold certificates, and a crisis developed when people noticed a whole lot of gold certificates in paper form and not much gold to back it up, so they took the gold instead of the worthless paper. Now we understand what happened. Let me retweet what I said. The Fed printed too many counterfeit gold certificates. People started demanding gold instead of the worthless paper, and a panic ensued. FDR's excuse was that the people were hoarding gold. I want you to note the modus operandi of these thieves, because they will repeat the same process with a twist next time. They are still up to their paper tricks, and today it's promises of gold in the future, but COMEX isn't making good on gold futures. So promises of gold in the future is already in default, isn't it? They don't have any gold yet. They set the price of gold. Does that sound a little shady to you? In 1933, the Fed was counterfeiting gold certificates. And since they are doing it again, a little different this time, anyone can see that gold confiscation is the other shoe you're waiting to drop. This is why I'm sure that the Federal Reserve will call in the people's privately held gold and give them newly printed fiat paper in place of their precious metal, which some consider real money. They traded their worthless fiat for real money, and the Fed will take it from them and hand them fake money, fiat. If they don't swap it immediately for something real, they might lose all they have worked for all their lives. The day is coming when the Fed will call in the people's gold. And what will that do to the value of gold? It depends a lot on what the world does regarding fiat. If they use their gold holdings to back the currency, then it ceases to be fiat at that point. But is that what people want? Is metal money? There was a time when seashells were money. That was a long time ago. Should we go back? Why don't we give up our cars and ride horses instead? Give up jet flight and walk to foreign countries. The truth is, gold is obsolete as money, isn't it? Gold is easily tracked, and so it's easily confiscated, and this kills the value of the metal. I won't call it a precious metal because it doesn't have many uses once money is off the list. And I think it will be as soon as the government steals all the gold from the people. You put your unspent earnings into gold, and the government takes it from you, handing you little pieces of paper instead. And what is the intrinsic value of these pieces of paper? Voltaire said that eventually fiat returns to its intrinsic value of 0. By decree, it has value, and people are forced to accept it as legal tender. But this gives one parasitic group too much power over the others. Eventually, they wind up with all the corporations, all the gold, all the stocks, bonds, and banks, and we get little pieces of paper to mark our debt. No, I have a better idea. We all buy Bitcoin and tell the bankers to bank this. Decentralized currency is the way to go, no? We don't want any central bank charging us interest on money they created on a ledger running up an $18 trillion debt, do we? As the world catches on to the banking scam, they are going to be looking for a place to store their earnings, and gold isn't money. Unless it's secured, and these pricks don't want to make your gold secure. They want to take it from you, and so I see Bitcoin as the new money. And I see cryptography developing in response to government seizure of one's private property. The banking system is dead. It started to die when the banks gave the IRS access to your deposits without any law on the books to prove they had any right to your earnings. When the big banks started screwing around with derivatives and they influenced our so-called representatives to pass the Bankruptcy Reform Act of 2005, that was the final coffin in the nail of the banking system. Paying you 0.3% annually for your deposits isn't going to justify the risk you take when banks seize your assets. Recall that when Campbell, a New York attorney, did not turn over his private property to the Fed, Chase seized his safety deposit box and handed his private property over to the banksters. That must be interpreted as unsafe. Your safety deposit box is anything but safe with the Fed around to take what's yours. We need the Fed like we need the Ebola virus. And I favor yanking their monopoly on the nation's currency just as soon as we possibly can. How do you feel about the Fed? Should they go or no, Joe? Go down to the comments section of this video and do let us know. The more controls they put on us, the more we want to get free of their grip. The more wealth they take from us, the harder we shall look for an invention that frees the slaves. And with the advent of Bitcoin, I'd say someone is thinking and producing a currency that they can't take if all the minds who are working on this problem have their way. We don't like the snooping, and we want our privacy back. And we want to see an end to each false flag, inside job terrorist attack. As the people become aware, they will structure a defense. They will come up with solutions that make total sense. Computer programs will play a role in protecting the people. Bitcoin and the blockchain are just one vehicle. You're going to see a flip in the distribution of wealth. Bitcoin can make poor people rich and improve the nation's health. Early adapters will be the first to benefit from the cryptocurrency. The big